Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things Writing. I'm your host, Brian the Writer. We have another wonderful writer interview for you today. You know, I'm actually very lucky in that these public relations groups, they reach out to me and say, hey, would you be interested in interviewing our authors? Of course, it's to make content for them, which I appreciate because it makes content for me. And I'm always looking for authors, by the way, to interview. So if you know of an author or you're an author yourself and you want to come on the show, let me know. You can certainly come here and we can talk. So today I have the author of the book, The Changing of Keys. It's written by Carolyn Jack. And I think I got that name right, Carolyn Jack. And this book is kind of goes into some really interesting and deep seated ideas. Yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When you look at what makes artists tick, it's not just necessarily this idea of an artist being, I'm not just a writer. I appreciate art. I love paintings, for example. Love, especially the classic painters. The classic paintings are my favorite. I think I've told you on the show before that I love the painting, ancient Rome and modern Rome by Pascal. They're wonderful. But I also love music. I love classical music. I love classical opera. Interesting stuff. I love the theater. These are all different art forms that I appreciate. In another life, I did some stage acting as well, and I love that aspect. So, The Changing of Keys. It explores kind of this cutthroat world of classical opera with a person who the main character has to go through. It's a coming of age story, very much, and I think it's really interesting. But you know, the thing is I don't want to sit here and tell you all about the book. As a matter of fact, you're not really here to watch me talk about the book. Let's invite on the book, the author of the book, The Changing of the Keys, Carolyn Jack. Carolyn, welcome to the show. Oh,
thank you, Brian. Really nice to be here.
it's great to be. I am often shocked and surprised when people want to come on the show with me. I think I've said that before. I think the people who watch the show are tired of me saying that.
I think you should give yourself a little more credit for that.
Well, so you know, I always like to start these shows off kind of the same way. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a person who has made a sort of late career transition. I was a journalist for 40 years as an arts journalist, primarily doing criticism and reporting on a wide variety of the arts, but also on how the arts affect our communities in terms of education and economic impact, all kinds of aspects to that. So I reached a point where, this is about 10, 15 years ago now, where it was apparent that journalism was struggling pretty hard and the jobs were going away. And I had always wanted to be a novelist. I've always written creatively, kind of on the side, without really trying to do too much with it professionally. And it seemed like the time had come to pay more attention to that. So I ended up getting into an MFA program and was really excited about that, and have spent the last 10 years since I completed the MFA trying to get something published, which is a whole other thing, of course. So I feel like I've weathered kind of a gap in my life, stepping from one thing that I was so used to doing and so impassioned about to another thing that I'm finding I'm even happier with, which is nice.
It's kind of interesting. You stepped from one career into sort of something else at the same time that this chasm between the indie and the publishing world sort of opened.
Yes.
And it's like if you could pick a more confusing time to jump into writing, I don't know what that time would be.
Well, it has been a muddle, I think, for not only for the newbies like me, but for even the people who have been in that industry for a long time, because
Yeah.
as with everything else, technology has changed everything in
Yeah, it
every
has.
artistic or whatever kind of pursuit you want to talk about. So everybody's trying to find new paths, and no one has any clear idea what's going to work 5 minutes from
No.
now. So we're all just feeling our way in the dark, kind of.
You're right. I mean, technology moves at such this rapid pace.
Hmm.
I remember when you wanted a piece of art commissioned, it would come in a physical format, and now you can commission a piece of art, and it's all digitally done, and it shows up in your email or
Hmm.
however you download it. It's kind of it's a little scary, but
It
it's
is.
also very fascinating as well.
Well,
Um,
clearly, the whole digital side of things has affected everything in terms
mhm.
of
Yeah.
artist copyrights and uh, the whole issue of ownership and who can use something that's been created in a different way without infringing on copyright, or the
Hmm.
whole AI thing, of course, is now
Sure.
the next big trapdoor that's going to open, and we're going to have to see how that's dealt with. But in the meantime, most of us, like me, I think, are just sitting at home with our ballpoint pens and our pads of paper going, I'll just write this way.
I,
Don't
I,
bother me with all this other stuff.
and you're it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek statement you just made there, but the reality is, I have right behind me notebook pads that I use for capturing my ideas down.
Oh, I'm not joking. I use a
Yeah.
legal pad and a pen to do the first draft of anything, and then I load it into the computer, and then I do the editing. So
Well, so do you think that helps you from a creative perspective?
yes, oddly, even though I've written directly into the computer for decades now as a journalist, I mean, you just sit down and you bang the thing out, right?
Mhm.
I find that it helps me think. It
Mm.
helps me probe what I want to think if I'm sitting there on a chair with actual paper and pen. And you could just sort of jot down ideas and scratch things out. I don't know, there's something tactile and simple about it that lets me forget about dealing with technology. Some people, I'm sure, aren't bothered by technology. They know it so well, they're just going to, everything is automatic, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not too far away from that, but it's a mindset and it's an aesthetic, I think. I just like the simplicity of pen and paper, and it helps me figure out what I want to say.
I wonder if there's almost a certain I don't know. We need a neurochemical expert on to talk about, when you've got that pen in your hand and
Mm-hmm.
that creative side that makes the shapes of the
Lights up.
letters, and
Yeah.
how does it,
Mm-hmm.
how does that work? But I suppose that leads us into to really the question of, and I had mentioned this earlier, but I love classic art. I love there's a painting in at the Louvre.
Mm-hmm.
It was painted by Pascal. It's called Ancient Rome, and it's my favorite piece of art ever. Absolutely adore it. But I find that I'm attracted to these other types of art, music and theater and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think? I mean, do you think there's an interesting connection between writers and these other modalities of art?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and it seems to surprise people. I guess occasionally it surprises me too to find out that someone who we all know is really good in one pursuit also does another. There are many people who are actors or musicians who also paint. There are painters who act. It's I think the creative mindset is one that inspires curiosity. And when you're a curious person and you not only want to find out about things, but you also like to explore your own head,
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in all kinds of ways of doing that. So it's
Yeah.
fun, and I think once you've stopped being afraid of being an artist in one form, it doesn't seem nearly as troublesome to pick up a second. I've always been someone who wrote and sang. Those are the two things that I like to do most, and that I've found that I have at least some talent at. So, and they're not unrelated. Naturally, singing involves words most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that connection, but also just the sense of whatever's inside you, you're getting it out somehow, and it's a great release. I think people find that to be not only really a pleasure, but really necessary in some
Yeah.
ways. And I worry about people who haven't found their creative outlet
Mm-hmm.
because, and some people think they don't have one, but I think everybody does. I think we all have them. We just need to figure out what they are.
I have said that for years. Everybody has a creative part to them. Whether it's whether you're a baker and it's that final how a cake comes out in
Exactly.
taste or view, or whether you're a steel worker in a certain way that you do your welding. There is art to everything. It's just a
I
matter
actually
of
did
finding.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I go ahead.
I was just going to say, I actually did a series on that, a newspaper series. This is when I was working at the Plain Dealer in Cleveland. I was interested in writing about how art affects everybody because so many people seem to think art has nothing to do with them. It's not for them. They're
Mhm.
just, they think that's weird or not for them. So I went out and interviewed a whole lot of different people in a lot of different pursuits. They were teachers and plumbers and attorneys and just all kinds of folks about what aspects they liked about their job. And to a person, the thing they enjoyed most was the creative part. The attorneys, this particular attorney who was a litigator, loved being in the courtroom because it was like acting.
Mhm.
He had been in amateur theatricals and stuff, and he had learned that performing was something he really enjoyed. Same thing with teachers. The plumber I talked to really enjoyed designing bathrooms. It's like that was the part he didn't, yeah, it's going to solve the clog, right? But he also likes to figure out how to arrange the lighting and and
Yeah.
the fixtures and stuff. So it became obvious to me that people just needed to stop being afraid of the idea that liking art, doing art was somehow weird and fringy and made them feel, unstable and abnormal or something.
Yeah.
It's completely normal. In fact, humanity's been looking for millennia for reasons to distinguish ourselves from other animals.
Mhm.
Creativity, and I don't think humans own it, but creativity might be one of the things we do more of and more intensely than any other creature.
I think you're absolutely right. And I was instantly my mind flipped back to the elephants painting.
Yes,
You know, and
exactly. And
there's
birds building nests.
yeah,
Yes.
there's intent there,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that intent come across. So you wrote a novel about art
I
and
did
other
about musical
things.
art. Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell us about that?
I'd be happy to. This book is about a young man. It sort of follows his life from the age of 14 until he's grown and maybe in about his 50s. This person is a musical prodigy, very, very, very good at piano as a young person, and it just sort of comes naturally to him. He comes from a musical family, but that family is a very troubled one, and he finds himself at 14. His father has died young. His mother is raising him, seems to be with just strict attention to his potential to be a career pianist rather than treating him like, her son that she loves. And he's angry and confused, and he has trouble trusting people because his mother tends to direct his life without asking him or
Hmm.
consulting him in any way. So what turns his life upside down is that he gets sent off to the United States by her. She doesn't ask him if he wants to go. She just sends him, and he's to study piano there. It turns out that piano isn't really what he wants to do. There's some other artistic form that he wants to get into. And that represents a break with his whole family. He thinks he's free of it. He thinks he's found a way to do what he wants to do in his life, untrammeled by his mother's directions, etc. But he finds out over time that it's pretty difficult to shed the baggage you were raised with and
Oh, it
to
is.
shed the tendencies that you have and how you deal with people. And he struggles a great deal and reaches a crisis later on in his life.
Yeah. I can attest. It's really, really hard to run from who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Now in some of the notes, uh, I have this idea that the world of opera is very cutthroat.
Well, yes, I think you could say that about a lot of businesses. It's very competitive, is what I think that word indicates.
Mm.
And it is very competitive. I think any art form is, where you are at a certain level of professional achievement. And there are only so many outlets that you can aspire to. It's like young people today, well, at any time, but especially today, it seems like when they're trying to find colleges, it seems like everybody's aiming for the Ivy League.
Mm.
You're directed that way by your counselors, and everybody thinks, well, those are the only schools that count. Well, of course, that's not true, but it is
Yeah.
a strong perception. So I think in opera, as in many other artistic fields, there are certain places where if you're going to be the top in your profession, you aspire to those places, the Metropolitan in New York, La
Yeah.
Scala, places like that. And if you don't make it, you feel like you failed. So people, and especially, artists and performing artists, especially theatrical performing artists, can be quite dramatic and in their personal lives as well as in their private lives. Not all of them by any means, but
Yeah.
it does leak out occasionally. So
Absolutely.
it's I think when the book gets to the point where this boy is experiencing a professional world for a change, it isn't that he's daunted so much that he recognizes this is what's necessary. You have to really fight hard to get to the top. So it's a difficult milieu to be in,
Yeah.
and it's hard to trust people there too.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, because everybody is trying to get that top spot.
Yes,
My
precisely.
mind instantly went to this. So if I could do anything, if I
Mm-hmm.
could have any job in the world, like snap my fingers and poof, it happens, I would be first violin somewhere.
Really? Did you
Yeah.
ever study violin?
Nope. Can't play a note. Terrible at it. I
That's
can
what you'd like to be,
sing.
though, huh?
Yeah, well, I can sing, and I have a deep appreciation for music instruments, and
Mm-hmm.
the violin to me has always carried that ability to go from these somber, gut-wrenching notes to the happiest of delightful, light, flitty little tunes, and
Mm-hmm.
and everything in between. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
makes the
Yes.
violin so amazing to me. That or piano. I would do piano too.
I feel that way too. I'd
Yeah,
always wanted to study piano myself and
yeah,
really never got the chance. Maybe,
yeah.
well, maybe not too late now, but certainly too late for me to be,
Well,
uh, Vladimir Horowitz or something. It's not going to happen.
well,
So,
arthritis kind of makes that kind of takes that out of my
yes,
wheelhouse. But that's okay. So you have this main character. What's the main
yes.
character's name again?
He does not have a name. He is not named.
Oh,
So
in, interesting.
I will say about the book that I got the idea for it from in a in a in a way. I mean, it isn't directly reflective at all, but in a
Mhm.
way, it's sort of about my father.
Okay.
My father wanted, as a young man, to sing opera,
Hmm.
and he was firmly discouraged from it by the authoritative members of his family who thought that was no profession for a member of their family. And I think all his life he felt like he'd ended up in the wrong. He ended up being a doctor and a very good doctor, but he
Yeah.
clearly thought that, that probably wasn't the correct field for him.
Yeah.
And his own youth was similar to the characters in that he did lose his father early, at the age of 7, and his mother like the mother in the book, was going deaf, and he couldn't communicate with her very well, and
Hmm.
she sort of fell apart after her husband's death. So he came from a somewhat unstable early childhood, and the desire to be an artist that he was deprived of in a way made him who he was, which was somebody who had trouble being happy. He just had trouble being happy with who he was and where he was. So this book was an attempt uh, at a remove to explore that kind of mindset, how it could have developed, why a person turns out the way they do when they've had these early influences and these thwarted desires. So, this is why I write. I write to find out why people are the way they are. I guess I'm sort of like an amateur psychologist.
Well,
I've never studied psychology, but it fascinates me to see how people's early influences and their own inborn nature make them make choices that may seem kind of odd to the rest of us. Like, why would you do that? But I think there are reasons, and I want to know what they are.
I think that's true of all of us, to be quite honest. When we
Mm-hmm.
are writing, I think the ultimate goal of writing is to, I know I personally, and I'm mostly a horror writer for the most part,
Interesting.
and there's always a part of the writing experience that is really geared towards me finding out more about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a personality conflict in the book or exploring thoughts and ideas that I've had over the years that I've always thought about sitting down and entertaining and just to see where it takes me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's true of all fiction writers because at our core, like any artist, our job is primarily to hold a mirror up to reality.
I agree with that. And a mirror up to ourselves, because
Mhm.
the reality that we have is the one that we derive from our own experience. So even though people take on subjects that they maybe don't know about a lot and they research that sort of thing, I think a
Mhm.
lot of the really emotional underpinnings of writing do have to come from yourself. How else do you know about the world except through those things?
That's true, and I think and it sounds a little, yeah, I think we've fallen down sort of this interesting psychological hole, but that's fine because that is what, I kind of wonder. So we write to find out more about ourselves and the world around us.
Mhm.
Uh, do people read to find out more about the world around them?
I I strongly think they
Hmm.
do. Even if it just feels like entertainment,
Yeah.
you're still learning about another human being's existence in some way. In fact, there have been studies done. This is the arts journalist in me
Yeah.
popping
No.
out. There have been studies that have found that people who read novels, specifically novels, fiction, because it covers such a broad range of possibility in human behavior, those people tend to be more tolerant, more understanding of human behavior. They have more of a sensibility for how, a kind of compassion. They learn compassion from novels in a way they wouldn't if their experience of human actions and feelings was limited. So I think, I'm not trying to say we're doing a public service here,
I think we
but
are.
in a way, I think it does help people to read these stories. Any stories, they could get them from TV or radio or
Yeah.
the internet or wherever they find them. As long as you're finding out what other people are doing and why, it helps you understand them and yourself better. I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
No, I think that's true. It's an examining of the human condition,
Yes, exactly.
and that's why arts exist uh, at its pinnacle is an
Mm-hmm.
examination of the human condition. Um, so your primary character grows up in this rather difficult environment,
Yes.
um, but they shift over time. They shift to become a grown up adult
Mm-hmm.
with grown up adult problems and all that stuff. Um, was it difficult taking a character because horror novels tend to happen in a very short span of time,
Yes.
sometimes days, and that's it. That's you just
Uh-huh.
get that. So there's not a lot of character development over that time frame. How did you manage the character development from a youngin to an adult?
I think it was easier for me with this than it might have been in a different kind of story because I felt I knew this character so thoroughly. Even though he is not directly modeled on any one person in any way, all writers, I think, end up pulling different things from different experiences and people they've known to create
We're the
characters.
sum of our parts, as I like to
Yes,
say.
precisely. Yeah. So this character has attributes, lots of attributes and tendencies that, for instance, my real father did not have,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. But I felt I understood this character so well, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew where I wanted him to go psychologically. In fact, that's usually about the only thing I know when I'm starting to write a book is I know what change I want this person to experience. So I knew where I wanted to take him. I had no idea how to get him there.
Yeah.
So the way I do this, writers all have different ways of doing things. The only way that made sense to me and still does is to really take it line by line, word by word. It's like, okay, I want him to start here. You do have to sort of know where you want to start, or
Sure.
at least experiment till you find it. And then it's like, okay, what happens next? What do I want him to say and do or feel? And you're just creeping along, putting down little bits of things that he's going to do next. And pretty soon you start, the path starts taking a little shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see, at some point I think I realized, he can't stay where he is. He has to go somewhere else. So then I had to get him from where he was to this other geographical location. It's one moment of discovery after another, and that's what makes it so much fun. I don't think it would be like doing a term paper to me to sit down and have this plan, this outline. Okay, now we have 2 paragraphs. We're going to take it here, and then I know we're going to take 4 paragraphs. That would be so joyless to me. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sure there are
I
plenty of
agree.
people who write very effectively that way, but I am not one of them.
There are plenty of people that do that. I don't understand that method of writing. I usually start out with I have a character, and I usually have a pretty good sense of the character, at least at the beginning. And I know what horrible thing I want to do to them up here. And then I say, okay, go. And then I like to say I walk along behind them taking notes. That's all I'm doing.
Yes.
And eventually, and I know kind of what resolution I want to have, but it's really interesting when I'm writing. That resolution changes. Where they end up at that very, very last paragraph changes. So it's just oodles of fun. I think it's oodles of fun anyway. But again,
it is. Otherwise, why do it? Yeah.
Yeah, and we are creatives, and that's just the way it works. So you have this wonderful book, and it's out now or it's coming out. I don't remember.
It is out. It came out September 17th, so it's available in all kinds of places.
And the Amazons of the world and everywhere else, I'm sure. Yes, at the
Corner Bookstore in New York City, and through Regal House Publishing, and yes, Amazon and Bookshop. Yes.
Yes, very cool, very cool. And just out of curiosity, is there another book in this series coming out, or?
It's not a series. I have never conceived of myself as a person who writes a series, although many people do, and they're lucky because those can be very rewarding for both the reader and the writer. But no, this was a singleton, and I have another couple of things sort of in the can that I'm hoping to do something with over the next couple of years.
Excellent.
So I'm hoping. We'll see.
It's always one of those. So the Dramatic Dead, which was my second novel, was always meant to be a standalone mystery novel, and 2 books after the first one, I finally ended the series. But it's not to say I won't resurrect the characters because I love them. They're awesome.
That's great. Well, I think it's wonderful to have the opportunity of going back to something like that and embellishing it and taking it farther. Yeah. That's great.
So what is the name of the book again?
It's called The Changing of Keys.
The Changing of Keys. It seems appropriate for a book of that nature.
Thank you. Well, with yes, the piano reference and musical island reference.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Thank you.
Well, very cool. I will make sure and put a link in the post note or in the post notes. Put a link in the video notes so people will know where to find you. Go down and hunt you out, or hunt you down and buy and all that great stuff. Buy and read and appreciate and like and review.
Thank you so much. I really
What's
enjoyed
up?
talking to you.
And do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's carolynjack.com.
Okay, I will put that. I'm through the power and magic of editing. I'm going to put it down below you right now. Poof.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Magic.
What can I say? I have some pretty amazing abilities, most of which I make up on the spot.
Because you're a writer.
Because I'm a writer, and that's we play with our imaginary friends.
Yes.
Yeah, so go out and check out Carolyn's book. I've read the back of it. It sounds fantastic, and I think you'll very much enjoy it. So, Carolyn, thank you so much for being on the show, All Things Writing. I really appreciate it. We'll get this posted to YouTube, and I'll share a link, and then you can share it around, and everybody will be happy.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And for All Things Writing and all my wonderful viewers and listeners and however you get the media, I really, really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We're also, I also have on tap, very, very soon, we're going to have an author who focuses on book publishing and book marketing. And book marketing is something that if you walk into a room of authors and you say book marketing, at least 3/4 of them will run. And the other group that is still left behind is brand new to writing and they don't know to run yet. So, it's always a complex thing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's that business. It's the business side that us creatives don't do very well.
Yes, we'd rather not, but
No.
we have no choice.
Yeah. And I also apologize to the viewers. I've got some camera jiggle going on here. That's because my dog is leaning on the chair of the desk. Wow, such a little dog. She makes such a mess. Well, on behalf of All Things Writing, thank you, Carolyn, and I appreciate everybody watching. And for All Things Writing, this is Brian the Writer signing off. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Ancona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.